When Maya inherited the farmhouse at Black Orchard, the lawyer said 3 things. The land was paid off, the nearest neighbor was 2 miles away, and whatever she did, she should never let the apples rot on the ground. "Why not?" she'd asked. He'd looked at her for a long time before answering, because that's when they come back. She didn't ask who they were. She should have. Maya had never met her great-aunt Helen. The woman had lived alone for 40 years in a place called Black Orchard, somewhere in the hills of northern Oregon, and when she died at 93, she left everything to Maya, the only living relative who'd never asked her for money. The property came with no mortgage, no liens, just a handwritten note tucked inside the deed. The land remembers. The wolves remember. Keep the harvest clean, and they'll leave you be. Maya's friends told her to sell it. Sight unseen. Her therapist said it might be good for her. A fresh start after the divorce, after the layoffs, after the year that had slowly hollowed her out. So she packed her car, drove 9 hours north, and turned off the highway where a weathered sign read, Black Orchard, Pop, 147. The town was barely a town. A gas station, a post office, a diner with a gravel parking lot, a few scattered houses that looked like they'd been standing since before roads were paved, and everywhere, apple trees, rows and rows of them, stretching across the hillsides in neat lines, their branches heavy with fruit that gleamed dark red, almost black in the afternoon sun. Her great-aunt's property sat at the end of a long dirt road, tucked into a shallow valley surrounded by forest. The farmhouse was small, white paint peeling, roof sagging slightly on one side. Behind it, maybe 20 acres of orchard stretched toward the tree line, the rows so old the trunks had grown thick and gnarled. Maya stood in the driveway, keys in hand, listening. No traffic, no voices, just wind moving through leaves and the distant cry of a hawk. It should have felt peaceful. Instead, it felt like the land was holding its breath. The inside of the house smelled like old wood and dried flowers. Furniture sat under sheets. Dust coated the windowsills. In the kitchen, a calendar hung on the wall, still turned to March. 8 months ago. Maya opened cabinets and found rows of mason jars filled with dark preserves, their labels written in careful cursive. Black Orchard, 2019, 2020, 2021. In the bedroom, she found more notes. Some were grocery lists, some were reminders, but one, pinned above the nightstand, stopped her cold. Harvest begins September 15th. Do not delay. Do not let fruit fall. Burn what drops. Salt the rows. They are always watching. Maya pulled the note down, folded it, and shoved it in her pocket. Great, she muttered. Aunt Helen was losing it. But that night, lying in the narrow bed with the windows open to let in the cool air, she heard something that made her skin crawl. Howling. Not dogs, not coyotes. Something deeper, fuller, layered in a way that sounded almost like harmony. It came from the orchard. She sat up, heart pounding, and crept to the window. The moon was high and pale, casting silver light over the rows of trees. The apples gleamed like eyes, and moving between the trunks. Shapes, four-legged, lean, slipping through shadows too smoothly to be real. One of them stopped at the edge of the closest row and turned its head toward the house. Its eyes reflected the moonlight in flat, unnatural discs. Maya jerked the curtain shut and stepped back, pulse hammering. The howling continued for another minute, then stopped all at once, like someone had flipped a switch. She didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, Maya drove into town. The diner, Ruthie's, was the only place open. Inside, a handful of locals sat at the counter, nursing coffee and talking in low voices that stopped the moment she walked in. The waitress, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair, smiled tightly. "You must be Helen's niece, Maya," she said. "Yeah. Heard you moved in yesterday. You settling okay?" "Fine," Maya said, sliding onto a stool. "Except for the wolves." The diner went very quiet. The waitress, her name tag said Ruth, poured Maya a coffee with hands that didn't quite shake, but didn't quite stay steady either. "Wolves," Ruth repeated carefully. "Yeah. Heard them last night. Saw them too. Big ones. Out in the orchard." An older man at the far end of the counter snorted. "No wolves in Black Orchard," he said flatly. "Haven't been for 30 years. "Then what did I see?" No one answered. Ruth set the coffee down. "Your aunt kept to herself," she said. "But she knew the land, knew the rules. If you're smart, you'll follow them." "What rules?" "Harvest on time," Ruth said. "Don't let the fruit rot. Keep the rows clean. And if you see something out there at night—" She paused. "You didn't." Maya laughed, but it came out brittle. "That's it? That's the advice?" The old man turned on his stool. "Your Aunt Helen lived here 40 years without trouble," he said. "You want the same? You do what she did. You want to be clever? You won't last the season." Maya left the diner with a knot in her stomach and a to-go cup of coffee she didn't drink. Back at the house, she found something she'd missed the day before. In the barn, stacked against the far wall, were bags of salt, dozens of them, industrial-sized, the kind used for winter roads. Next to them, a handwritten list. Salt the perimeter every full moon. Burn fallen fruit within 24 hours. Do not enter the rows after dark. Do not answer if you hear your name. Maya stood there, staring at the words, feeling the weight of something she didn't understand pressing down on her shoulders. Outside, the wind picked up, and from somewhere deep in the orchard, a single howl rose and fell. September 15th came faster than Maya expected. She'd spent 2 weeks cleaning the house, exploring the property, avoiding the orchard after sunset. The howling came most nights now, but she'd learned to ignore it, or at least pretend to. Harvest day arrived, with clear skies and cool air. Maya had no idea how to harvest apples at scale, but she found tools in the barn, ladders, baskets, tarps, and figured she'd start small. The trees closest to the house were heavy with fruit, their branches bending under the weight. The apples were beautiful, dark, glossy, perfect. She picked 4 baskets worth before noon, her hands sticky with juice. It was on her 5th trip back to the barn that she saw it. At the far end of the nearest row, half hidden in the grass, a pile of apples, fallen fruit, already starting to soften and brown. Maya's stomach tightened. Burn what drops. She left the basket by the barn and walked toward the fallen pile, boots crunching on dry grass. Up close, the apples didn't just look rotten, they looked wrong. The skin was split in places, leaking dark juice that didn't smell sweet. It smelled metallic, sour. She crouched down, reaching for one. "I wouldn't," Maya yelped and spun around. A man stood at the edge of the row, maybe 60, wearing a faded denim jacket and a John Deere cap. He held a rake in one hand. "Jesus," Maya gasped. "You scared me." "Name's Carl," he said. "I live over the ridge. Used to help your aunt with the harvest." "Oh, okay. Thank you, I didn't know." "Those," he nodded at the pile. "You need to burn them. Today." "I was going to—" "Now," Carl said, and his voice was flat. "Before sundown. and don't touch them with your bare hands." Maya looked down. Her fingers were an inch from the nearest apple. She pulled her hand back. "Why?" Carl didn't answer. He just turned and walked back toward the tree line, rake over his shoulder. "Hey, wait!" Maya called, but he didn't stop. She looked back at the pile. In the center of it, half buried in rot, something gleamed white. She leaned closer. It was a tooth, human-sized. Maya stood up so fast she almost tripped. She ran back to the barn, grabbed work gloves, a shovel, and the can of lighter fluid Helen had left behind, and she burned that pile until nothing was left but ash and a black smear on the ground. The whole time, she felt eyes on her back. When she finally looked up, the sun was setting, and at the far end of the orchard, where the trees met the forest, shapes, tall, lean, standing on two legs, watching. That night, the howling was different. It wasn't distant. It wasn't just sound. It was close. Maya woke to the sound of something scratching at the door. Not frantic, not violent, just steady, rhythmic, patient. She sat up in bed, every muscle locked. The scratching stopped. A voice came from just outside the window, low, layered, wrong. Maya. Her name spoken in a voice that sounded like many voices at once, all slightly out of sync. She didn't move. "We know you burned it," the voice said. "That was good. You're learning." "Who are you?" she whispered. "We are what was here before the trees, before the fences, before the roads. We are the wolves of Black Orchard, and you—" A pause. "You are the keeper now." Maya's hands shook. "I didn't ask to be. Your blood did. Your aunt made a promise. You inherited it." "What promise?" "That the harvest would be kept, that the fruit would not rot, that the land would be honored. In return, we do not hunt, we do not take, we wait." "Wait for what?" The voice at the window shifted, like something large was settling its weight against the wall. "For the ones who forget," it said simply. "For the ones who let the apples fall, who let the sweetness turn to rot. That rot calls us. That rot is permission. Your aunt understood, kept the land clean, kept us fed on what was already lost. You do the same. We leave, you fail. What happens if I fail?" Silence stretched. Then, we stop waiting. Maya forced herself to stand, to walk to the window, to pull the curtain back just an inch. A muzzle pressed against the glass, long, furred, eyes like coins in the moonlight. Behind it, more shapes, dozens of them, sitting in rows like an audience, all facing the house. "How long?" Maya asked, voice cracking. "As long as the land is kept," the wolf said. "As long as the harvest is honored. Your aunt lived 40 years in peace. You can too. And if I leave, then someone else comes. Someone who doesn't know. Someone who lets the apples rot. And we will do what we were always meant to do." The wolf pulled back from the glass. The pack rose as one and melted back into the rows, silent as smoke. Maya stood there for a long time, staring at the empty orchard. In the morning, she found a deer carcass at the edge of the property line, picked clean, bones arranged in a neat pile. A reminder, a promise, a warning. Maya stayed, not because she wanted to, because leaving felt like handing someone else a lit fuse. She learned the rhythms of the land. Harvest in September, salt the rose on the full moon, burn what falls, never let the apples rot. The wolves came most nights, moving through the orchard like shadows, their eyes reflecting the moonlight in flat, unblinking discs. Sometimes she saw them on 2 legs, sometimes 4, sometimes something in between. They never came close. Not as long as she kept her end of the deal. The town left her alone. Ruth nodded when Maya came into the diner. Carl helped with the harvest each year, never saying more than necessary. And at night, when the howling rose from the orchard, Maya didn't close the windows anymore. She listened, because the wolves weren't just guardians. They were a membrane, a border, keeping something worse on the other side. She didn't know what that something was. She didn't want to. All she knew was that the land was old and hungry and had rules that predated human memory. And you're hearing this because Maya kept the harvest, because she didn't let the apples rot, because she honored the deal her great aunt made, and the one before her, and the one before that. But every year, the trees grow a little darker, the fruit a little sweeter, the wolves a little closer, and one day, maybe soon, maybe generations from now, someone will inherit Black Orchard who doesn't believe in wolves, who doesn't follow the rules, who lets the apples fall and rot into the ground. And on that day, the wolves will stop waiting. They'll stop watching, and they'll remember what it felt like to hunt. So if you ever find yourself driving through northern Oregon and you see a sign for Black Orchard and you smell apples on the wind even though it's the wrong season, keep driving. Don't stop. Look too long at the rows of trees or the shapes moving between them. And whatever you do, if you hear your name called from the orchard at night, don't answer. The wolves are very patient, but they never forget who owes them a debt.